Welcome everybody to today's weekly webinar with Prevail Legal Marketing. Prevail Legal Marketing is a performance marketing company for law firms that guarantees results. And today we're going to be talking about the 5 foundational processes, platforms, needs that every law firm needs to have in place before they're running digital marketing campaigns. So it's just after the hour. I'm going to get it started now, and we'll move through. We'll have some questions at the end, so please submit a question in the Q&A if you have any. And we're going to make today's really efficient. We don't want to waste your time with fluff content, so it's going to be jam-packed with meaty content, and you're going to love it. This is a really good presentation. So you're not alone. Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. Now, this quote was said over 100 years ago, I think in the 19th century. And John Wanamaker, he didn't have the benefits that we have today with technology, tracking, and really being able to know where leads and activities coming from. So while it may seem like this is the case, it's not the case as much anymore. And so we're going to talk about how to really lay a strong foundation for your digital marketing campaign so that you know exactly what's working, what isn't, and you can have success instead of looking at your marketing as a pain or an expense or a frustration, and really being able to view it as an asset. Before we get started, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. My name is Adam. I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. I have a lovely wife, Becky, and 2 kids. That's Parker there in the front, Macy in the back. We recently purchased a home, and that's our cider toast as we were having our first dinner in the empty living room. I've owned agencies for over 12 years. I recently became very obsessed with crypto. I'm a little late to the party, but definitely enjoying the crypto ride. Gave up coffee a few months ago. If you want to talk about that, you can send me an email personally. It's been a great decision, but one that I never thought I would make, but it's had really positive impacts on my life. And I like to train in Muay Thai twice a week. So I've picked up martial arts and really enjoy that. On the business side, I've been running agencies since 2009. Currently, we manage about 6 million, maybe a little bit more annually. We have a full-time staff that's in-house. So we have a really solid team. We've been running digital advertising for a long time, and we specialize in pay-per-click advertising for law firms. Instead of doing the traditional retainer model, we actually have a pay-per-lead model where you only pay for performance, you only pay for results, and we guarantee a lead price before you get started. So while we are through and through a PPC agency, we do not take percentage of spend retainers or flat fee retainers. We guarantee you a lead price, and that's a lead you're going to pay. That's the price you're going to pay for each lead that's generated, and that's how we're compensated. So we are really looking to redefine the relationship between marketing agencies and law firms. We believe that law firms have been taken advantage of with 20% retainers, 30% retainers, and really not effort and energy to show for that. We want to be paid based on our performance, and I know that a lot of attorneys want to be paying other people based on performance because that's often how they're paid. But today, we're going to be talking about marketing, and we're going to be talking about why the marketing maybe isn't working for you. There's a 3-stage process with every marketing, with every fulfillment, with the fulfillment of your business. We have the marketing that generates leads. We then have the sales process, which is step 2, and then we have the fulfillment. Now, odds are your fulfillment's really strong, and you're wanting to bring in marketing to build more leads and activity and grow the firm. But the marketing and maybe the sales process are a little bit aren't working the way you want them to. So today we're going to be talking about your marketing process. So you might be thinking that you're spending money on a digital marketing campaign that isn't working. The return on investment is negative. You may have difficulty actually tracking those leads. Where are the leads coming from? What's the cost per lead? Which platforms are performing the best? How is the campaign doing overall? And it might just be overwhelming for you. It might be frustrating. You don't really know who to trust. You may have a good agency or good partner, or a good employee that's helping you with the marketing, but you're just not getting the information that you need, and the campaign is not successful. And then you might be looking across the street and seeing other firms that are doing a lot of marketing and thinking, why is it that they're able to do such a good job in their marketing and I'm having troubles? What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the processes that are in place by the highest performing law firms, attorneys, you know, legal businesses that are using marketing at a very high volume to grow their firms. You know, 40, 50, $100,000 per month in advertising spend, and what that looks like on the process side to ensure that that marketing spend is being spent efficiently. You as a law firm owner know how the campaign's performing, and you can then invest and spend more with confidence while also getting a positive ROI. That's what we're going to be talking about today. There are 5 components to that that I think are really important, and we're going to cover those. So to get started, we're first going to talk about, we're going to walk through these 5, and we're going to talk about how each one kind of presents itself as a problem, and then different solutions that we see the highest performing law firms are using in order to bridge that gap. So the very first problem that we run into is we see inbound and outbound call coverage not being handled, not being handled in a way for calls coming in after hours or before hours, and law firms are missing phone calls. So the problem is maybe you've run your firm on referrals and repeat business, and you have a presence in the community, and people will email or call and they'll leave a message because they know who you are. They were referred to you. They already know you. They're willing to wait to hear back, and they know and trust your firm already. In those cases where the prospect is warm, having call coverage after hours is not as important because they're willing to wait. They're willing to be patient. They might email you at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night and be okay with getting a call at 10 a.m. on Friday. And that's completely reasonable. However, in the 3-step process that I talked about, marketing to sales to fulfillment, the sales and fulfillment part on a warm lead are really quite different than introducing a marketing component first and then going into sales. So when you introduce the marketing component, which is pay-per-click advertising, SEO, maybe you're buying ads, you're buying TV ads, whatever the case may be, whatever the marketing is, now that lead is not as patient. They're a cold lead. They don't want to wait for you to call them back at 10 a.m. on Friday because they don't actually know if you're going to call them back. They've never worked with you before. There is no trust. There's not an established relationship. When you're running marketing through paid ads or other channels, prospects are going to call all the time. They're going to submit forms in the evening. They're going to be calling early in the morning. And if you miss those calls, what they're doing is they're searching on Google for some sort of service, you know, criminal defense attorney. They're just going down the list. They're looking to see who looks reputable. They're looking to decide who to call. Once they call that person, if no one answers, they just move to the next one. They're in the process of finding a solution to their problem, and they're not going to wait for a day or 2 days or 3 days. That's just not what they're going to do. They're going to keep calling. And so if you don't have someone there to answer the call every single time, you're just missing out on leads. What we see is in most cases, when a phone call is missed, a voicemail is not left. Rarely do people leave voicemails. So the problem is you've introduced marketing. People are now calling you at different times. There's no trust. They really want to talk to someone immediately, and they're not able to get a hold of you. And it makes sense. I mean, you're not going to be answering phone calls at 10 o'clock on a Friday or at 1 a.m. on a Saturday if someone got a DUI. You're just not going to be answering those phone calls. In this chart, this is for a criminal defense campaign. We do see that most calls are done in business hours, but 17% of calls were done before 8 a.m. or after 5 p.m. And that's a high percentage. That means 1 in 6 roughly are being missed and are not a lead that's being picked up. And so what that does, that actually increases your lead cost by 17%. It increases your cost per acquisition by 17%. If your cost per acquisition is $1,000, all of a sudden becomes $1,170 because you've missed other calls and you don't have new cases to account for those calls. So running new campaigns, you have inbound call activity. It's very, very difficult when you're missing those phone calls, and the campaigns will suffer because of that. So in order to fix that problem, it's incredibly important that you hire a company to take calls off hours or when you need overflow. If a number rings for your receptionist and she's out for lunch for an hour and it rings 3 times, it should kick over to some sort of intake provider. That way you never miss a phone call. So that 17% becomes very low, maybe 3%. You ensure you never miss a phone call. And the purpose of those companies is to really just intake, to ask a couple questions, and to schedule an appointment. They can disqualify people based on geographic targeting. Maybe if you for personal injury, maybe you want to ask a couple questions and you can disqualify them. But really the purpose of those companies is to take the phone call, ask a couple questions and get an appointment on your calendar for as soon as possible. And then they've moved them through the funnel. Now, it's really important that you find someone that has legal intake experience. What I hear from a lot of attorneys is that they're working with these call centers that have a large national brand. They're known and respected in the industry from a call center perspective or a virtual receptionist perspective, but they don't have legal experience. And when they don't have legal experience, it means that they're not going to know the questions to ask. A lot of times these companies are not 24/7. They're more of a receptionist than they are a call center. And that's the exact opposite of what you need. So if you're looking for one of these services and they don't have 24/7 coverage, they absolutely need to. The other benefit of some of these other companies, Alert Communications is one, Smith.ai is another, is that when someone submits a lead form on your website or on a landing page or somewhere else, that lead form can actually go to these companies and they can outbound call them right away. So instead of sending emails to your receptionist, you can actually feed the data right to Alert Communications or someone else that it'll then drop into their call system and they will start generating outbound calls and trying to contact that person as soon as possible. Again, if they submit a form on a Friday night at 9 p.m., you're not going to call them back that night. So you might as well have someone like Alert calling the lead right away. They'll be very surprised they got a call at 9 o'clock at night, but their call center is 24/7. They have legal experience, and that's going to work out really well for you. So if you do not have 24/7 call coverage and lead coverage, and you are running marketing campaigns, you're definitely missing out on leads, and you are definitely, the performance of your campaign is absolutely suffering. Next, we're going to talk about just tracking the performance of calls. I think what a lot of people don't know is that tracking the where phone calls are coming from and what's happening with those phone calls is quite a bit easier than you might expect. Now, again, when you're running these paid campaigns, roughly, it depends on the practice area, but let's say 50 to 70% of inbound leads can be phone calls. In the legal space, we see a lot of phone call activity. We also see form activity, but we see a lot of phone calls. And if you're running a pay-per-click campaign or again, TV or any other marketing campaign, and you have calls coming in, if you're just using the number for your law firm, you really don't know how many calls that campaign is generating. Also, if the campaign isn't performing very well and you're not sure why, but maybe you do know you're getting a lot of calls, you don't know, you don't have visibility into why it's not performing. So it's very frustrating if you're seeing phone calls come through or your phone is ringing or you're actually seeing activity, but you're not closing deals. The second part of that is, these two campaigns, these are from our call tracking software. 10% miss actually isn't that bad, but we have other campaigns that have 4% missed call rate. So you can know exactly how many phone calls your company is missing because it's going to either you as an attorney and maybe you're out of the office, or your receptionist and maybe she's not answering the calls, or maybe it's going somewhere else and you don't even know it. So you don't know why, you don't know how many calls you're getting, or you don't know why they're not converting. So in order to make sure you have that information to fill in these gaps, you need to purchase a call tracking platform. There are many popular call tracking platforms. We prefer CallRail. It's very powerful. There's Call Tracking Metrics, there's CallFire, there's tons of them. You can just search for call tracking platforms. There's a whole bunch, but CallRail is quite good. Now, what happens when you install something like CallRail is when someone calls in and they're looking for your services off of an ad or something else, what's going to happen is the system picks up the call and then it forwards it to the appropriate person. So here you can route the call based on hours. You can actually, if it rings 3 times and the receptionist isn't there, you can kick it over to Alert Communications or another company that we just talked about. So CallRail allows you to route calls. It'll also record phone calls. So if you are seeing a high number of calls and you're not seeing conversions, you can listen to the calls very easily and see what is preventing people from hiring you. Maybe the receptionist isn't doing a very good job at sales. Maybe they're saying there's a cost to the consultation. You want to start offering free consultations. Maybe they're just not polite on the phone. It could be a number of things. Maybe the calls are going to a number that you didn't even want the calls to go to. We have had numerous clients where they've either given us a phone number with 2 numbers transposed, and we put the number in their campaign. And as calls came in, we realized that the client was not getting the calls because the number we had received had transposed phone numbers. So we were able to identify early on that there was a problem with the phone number, figure out the solution, and then fix it. Another example is phone calls might come in and go to an automated dialing tree. And if it's set up incorrectly, press 1 for sales, press 2 for this, whatever, and it might be going to the wrong number, or it might be round robining between phone numbers for 45 seconds. We've seen it all. CallRail allows you to identify those things, a call tracking system. Like I was saying before, it also allows you to see how many calls have been missed. This little chart here is just right out of CallRail. It just says 10% of your calls are missed, 4% of your calls are missed. Very easy, and gives you the information that you need. So phone calls are critically important in generating leads, especially in the legal space. We see it more in the legal space than other spaces. And if you don't have people answering the calls, or you're not exactly sure what's happening when they do answer them, that's really going to cripple the performance of your campaign without a doubt. These are the two most important things that I believe that every law firm needs when they start running digital advertising, whether it's TV, pay-per-click, SEO, it doesn't matter. These two things are critically important. CallRail is somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 per month. A third-party company to do call coverage is probably going to run closer to $750 to $1,000 a month on the lower end, and then can go from there just based on your volume. All right, so the first two things we talked about were finding a company to handle inbound, outbound calls, getting a call tracking platform, and then number 3, and this is most important on the reporting side, is having a customer relationship manager. This is a CRM. This is where all of your leads go, and you're able to track where they're coming from. So the problem is, let's say that your campaign's performing well. You have people taking the calls. You're able to see that your missed call numbers are very low. It's all feeding into your legal intake system. And then you want to know how much money you've made on this advertising, but you don't know. And you don't know because the data is just not being handled in a way that allows you to report on it correctly. So you don't know how much revenue you generated. You don't have a detailed follow-up process for leads that maybe haven't moved through the funnel. You don't really have a strong database in the future to send them an email to nurture, or you're manually adding leads to a CRM, or your receptionist is, which is just very time consuming and frustrating. So when all these leads are coming in, if you want to scale your campaign, or you're doing bankruptcy, which is a little bit higher volume, you're in a higher volume niche, or you're just wanting to spend more, if you don't have a place to house all of those leads and clients and prospects, then it becomes very unwieldy, and a lot of things start falling through the cracks, a lot of things. So in order to rectify that, the third component that you need for these lead generation campaigns is having a CRM, just critically important. And I've heard, I heard a quote that said, someone was asking, what's the best CRM? And the best CRM is the one that you and your sales team uses. So it almost doesn't even matter which CRM you're using. It just has to be used. You need a CRM that tracks lead source. When leads are coming in, let's say they're coming in through a landing page through your PPC campaign. When that lead is submitted on the landing page and it's sent into your CRM, you want to be able to send in and identify that that lead came from Google Ads or Facebook ads or organic SEO or an email marketing campaign. Typically, that looks like a little drop down on the lead record that says this is where that lead came from. Now, when you have that tagged automatically, just when the lead is entered into the system, the next thing you want is to be able to associate revenue with that lead, have a system that has revenue associated with it. So if you're doing a one-time job like bankruptcy, or you have a longer-term client like contract law, you want to be able to associate revenue. And then at any given time, you say, run a report of the revenue that's generated broken down by my lead sources. And that's the way that you can easily establish return on investment with your marketing campaigns. That's all you need. It's not any more complicated than that. I really think that a lot of times reporting is made more complicated. I've seen charts and graphs from other digital marketing companies that shows impressions and clicks and all of this stuff. And while those things are important on our side as marketers, they're not as important on yours. What you want to know is, how much did I spend? Maybe what is my cost per lead? And then how much money did I make? The only way to do that easily, consistently, where it's not a total pain, to have a CRM that tracks the source and allows you to associate the revenue to each lead. That's it. Those are the only things that you need. Critically important to automate that lead flow into the CRM. You might need to hire someone to do a little bit of tech work. If you're building landing pages, make sure that's pushed right in. Don't do anything manual. And then as a bonus, and something that a lot of companies use when they kind of get next level, is tracking follow-ups and communication using the CRM. We use one that's called SalesMate. It allows us to make phone calls through it, send text messages. It's really quite powerful. And we can see all activity that's gone to any one of our prospects right within that CRM. Here are just a couple, but again, you probably already use one. And if you just search for practice management CRM, there's tons of them out there. But make sure revenue is associated and then the source of the lead is associated, and you can push those in through technology. That is the third component that is absolutely necessary in your ad campaign. So the next problem that we run into is I often hear people say, that's great, we're getting all of these leads, but I'm not able to get in touch with them. I call them and I just can't reach them. So leads are coming in, let's say you're getting a decent volume, and you start calling, you call once or twice over a few days and you're not able to get in touch. Or you have multiple people on your team and they're calling and they're not really sure who's been contacted when. You don't know when they're getting contacted. There's not visibility. People are maybe using their own phones, or maybe people are using their personal cell phones if you're trying to do text messaging. It's just not really a great thing if your team doesn't have an established protocol for how to follow up with those types of people, with your leads. So the way that we handle that is getting communication platforms in place that are more community-based and that the team can see and manage. So I was mentioning before, we use SalesMate. I really like SalesMate. It's not legal focused, but we're not a law firm. And it has these two buttons, the call button and the text button on the right, that allows you to make an outbound call right from your computer. And I can just put in my headset and I can talk through Wi-Fi on my computer, and it'll record the call, or text message. And then if anyone else on my team wants to get in there and they want to make a call or send a text message, they can easily get in and see the activity that was done before, listen to calls, see the text messages, and everything is centralized. It's really quite powerful. So use centralized platform for calling and texting. Use a platform that integrates with your CRM. Hopefully, there are some platforms like Connect, which is just text messaging, which is great. There are a lot of these types of platforms, but use a platform that allows you to have a central system and communicate with your prospects. CallRail, the call tracking platform, also is a lead center, which allows you to do similar things. So you could also use CallRail for your call tracking and then also your lead communication and management. CallRail is not a CRM, so that's the downside of using something like that. So what we've talked about so far, you need to have inbound and outbound call coverage. Call tracking platform really helps you identify gaps in your calls. You need a CRM, and then you need a way to be able to communicate with these leads. So these are 4 components that are absolutely critical if you're generating inbound leads. These are not as necessary when you have referrals, when people know you and they're coming back for repeat business. They will wait for you. And using these platforms are for people that will not wait for you. Now, I will make one more comment on text messaging. I hear some attorneys say that they're hesitant to text message, but I know a lot of people that don't answer calls, myself included. I only answer calls when I know who's calling me. I will get texts, and I am not surprised when I get texts from companies that I've reached out to, because I did submit a form. And as long as I can tell them to stop or not continue, I'm totally fine with them texting me. And the younger generations are obviously very comfortable in texting, and I don't think that it is an issue for law firms to be texting prospects. I think a lot of times, the legal field is very, very professional. Obviously, there's a lot of schooling. It's a very, respected sort of, I don't want to say traditional, but it's a respected industry. And so the text messaging might seem a little bit too casual, not as formal. But when consumers are connecting, text messaging is super important. So get comfortable text messaging, send text right away, and have conversations over text. I think it'll really help you convert a lot more of those leads. The last thing we're going to be talking about today is reporting. So another thing that we see quite often is, and this is not as relevant when you're not running ad campaigns. When you start running a digital ad campaign, now you're spending money. You're spending money on Facebook. You're spending money on Google. You're spending money on Bing, maybe Yelp, all of these different channels. And you don't know what your cost per lead is, or your cost per qualified lead, or what channel is performing the best. You don't know how campaigns are trending from month to month. You don't know your cost per customer or the lead quality by channel. There's just all of these different variables. And when you start getting into bigger numbers, maybe you're starting at 3 or 4,000, then you see success and you're getting up to 10,000, then you're seeing more success and you want to be at 20, 30, 40,000 in ad spend. Those are bigger numbers where really dialing the campaign can have a massive measurable impact on your business. So if you're not able to see that data clearly and you're not able to make those decisions, it's going to be really difficult for you. We already talked about the CRM tracking the source of the leads. So that's number one, critically important. If there isn't a CRM tracking the source of the leads, you can't create any data from it. All of the platforms need to be tracking conversions. That's also critically important. In many cases, the platforms, if the conversions are not set up correctly, they won't track conversions correctly. Just make sure your ad manager is tracking conversions correctly. Hire someone outside of your firm to help compile this data. I don't really care who it is. If you have an agency or a marketer, have them help compile the data. You can hire a freelancer off of Upwork to compile data weekly or monthly. The nice thing about Upwork, it's a freelancer marketplace online, upwork.com. When people post jobs on there, you get job submissions from people locally in the US, internationally. Depending on what you want, you can have someone go in and just pull the data on a weekly or daily basis and spit the data back out to you so you have a pulse on what's happening. So when you're running these campaigns, if you're running them internally or with an agency, if the data is not clean, then you're just not going to know how the campaign's performing. In this campaign below, we've seen bankruptcy really increase in cost per lead over the last 12 months. This is a chart that we're not excited to see, but what it does is it really shows us how the campaigns are changing as COVID came about and how COVID has changed. So, here we can see trends and have informed conversations with our clients about what's happening. And we can then make changes and pivots and make adjustments in the campaigns based on that. So to recap the different platforms, number one, inbound and outbound call coverage is absolutely critical. Please make sure you have someone answering calls 24/7. Call tracking platform, you must be able to listen to calls, see where they're coming from, see where the gaps in your marketing funnel are, because more calls come in more leads come in through phone calls than leads. And if there's a gap there, it's going to be a real problem. Then make sure all those leads are feeding into a customer relationship manager. That way you can look at the data, you can track it, and you can build reports. Make sure you're communicating with leads the way they want to be communicated with and in a way that your entire team can communicate. Text messages, phone calls, emails, they're all standard, but make sure your entire team has visibility. And then absolutely make sure you have consistent reporting. Without consistent reporting and just kind of feeling like the campaign's going well, you actually won't have clarity on if you can invest more money. I've seen countless campaigns spending $5,000 per month and the campaign's performing well, and they could probably increase to 10,000 and double their lead volume and revenue from that campaign, but they don't have confidence in the numbers and they're not clear on it. And so they won't do that. And so we try and help firms do that by giving clear data so that they can actually scale their campaigns. Those are the 5 foundational pieces that you need in digital marketing campaigns. So again, my name is Adam Arkfeld. The next webinar we have is actually going to be in 2 weeks, and it's how to maximize your marketing with a legal-focused call center. We actually have Alert Communications on as a guest. That will be an interview-style webinar. That will be in 2 weeks, which is going to be great. And now I'll take any questions that you might have. Okay, so the first question I see here is, which step do I start with? So of these 5, which one is the best one to start with? I personally believe that the step that is best is the inbound and outbound call coverage. So when you're generating leads, all the data is very important. If you are starting a campaign or you're running a campaign right now and you don't have 24/7 call coverage, absolutely start with that one. Make sure that you're not missing any calls, and then put the other pieces in place because they can be bigger and take more time to see the data better, manage the communication, and really make sure you're following up. Next question is, where do I find people to help with all of this? That's a great question. There are a couple different places. Obviously a lot of marketing companies can help with this. Upwork.com is a great freelancer marketplace. There people can help with it. There are companies that just work on integrations or just work on CRMs. So really just, just doing a quick Google search for that would be very easy. And yeah, I really think just if you know what you want, like a lot of times our clients don't know what they need. And so when they go to a marketing company or they're interviewing other marketing companies, they say, hey, I want to build a digital campaign. And the marketing company says, great, let's do that. We're going to build the campaign. And then they build the campaign, but these components are not in place. The call center, the CRM, the reporting, the communication. And so when that's the case, when that digital campaign is built and it's running and it's not working, it's because there's a gap in the middle in the sales component. So these are not incredibly difficult processes to put in place, and a lot of marketing companies can put them in place. But I would start with just knowing exactly what you want and then asking marketing companies what they can do. And then I'm a firm believer in saying, can you show me examples of something you've done? Because marketing companies are notorious for saying they can do everything and not doing it well. All right, last question, is texting a legitimate follow-up strategy? Absolutely, 100%. We see massive results with texting when people are consistent about it. Text someone right away, set an automated text right when they submit their form. Definitely stay on them with text messages. You don't want to bombard them too much, but text messages have pretty much 100% read rate, open rate, and read rate versus email or phone calls. Like people just read their text messages. So don't hammer them with text messages, but be persistent and communicate and have conversations and do as much as you can over text. And then when it's appropriate to convert into phone or person, do that. All right, that's what we have for today. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. We will be back in 2 weeks with Alert Communications and talking with them about how a legal focused call center can help you scale your business. Thanks and have a great rest of your week.